This is the 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano, quite similar to the one Oswald supposedly used in the 6th floor of the Schoolbook Depository. It's a little bit different in the fact that this is the carbine version that's a little bit shorter. It had a foldable bayonet, and it doesn't have the wood furniture on the end piece of the stock in front of the forearm grip. Other than that, the action is the same action as the 6.5 Carcano. There's a lot that's been written about this particular weapon. However, there's a few things that have been left out that I think are very relevant to the case. This is a bolt-action rifle. It fires a very unpredictable cartridge. But what's most unique about it is the sense that the bolt handle is in front of the rear of the receiver instead of to the rear of the receiver behind the bolt, where it normally would be on a Mauser-type action. This makes it a little harder to work the bolt. It's a strong action, but it's very crude and very rough, and it does not have the smoothness of, say, a Mauser or Weatherby or a Springfield or Enfield. It has a 6-round fixed magazine well. This does not detach. It does have the capability of firing 6 rounds, but they have to be loaded from a clip that is a stripper-type clip, but it is not similar in any way to the normal stripper clips that in most weapons will insert, stop halfway with a bolt open, and then shove the bullets in, take the clip out, and pocket it or throw it away. Instead, unlike the other weapons, and this is a key point, the Mannlicher Carcano must have the clip to function. Now, what we're going to show you right now is the fact that there is a small leaf spring that pulls into the bottom of, or pushes up into the bottom of the clip. This spring pushes a lever, and the lever is very narrow. It is almost impossible to load this weapon single shot. The only way the weapon can be loaded single shot is to place the round into the chamber and then slide the bolt home. The problem with that is the Mannlicher Carcano has a very weak extractor, and very often it will either not extract or it will not, or it will break the extractor upon chambering the round into the chamber. You cannot push the round down and have it lock like you can a normal bolt-action weapon, because there's just no way that it will stay in the chamber. There's no magazine feed grooves, there's no lips to hold the cartridge in place. Okay. Note that there is a lip at the very center of the clip. That little lip is utilized to hold the clip in place inside the weapon. It is then taken out by pushing a small button at this point right here inside the magazine well. You push forward on this, push down on the clip, and it will spring out the top. I'll demonstrate. The clip is inserted into the weapon. Push down and locks. Stays in place. To remove a full clip or a partial clip, you have to push down on the clip, release the button, and pull the rounds out. Notice also that in the bottom of the magazine well, there is an ejection port. There is a place right here, a hole, of which the clip falls out when the last round is chambered. Not fired, chambered. And we're going to take and do what Oswald did that day and show you what discrepancy we have with this. Supposedly, 3 shots were fired, 1 live round was found in the chamber. The 3 empty holes were found below the window that he supposedly used to take the shots from. That accounts for 4 rounds only. There's 2 rounds that are missing. We now have a clip with 4 rounds, supposedly what Oswald did. First, we find out that this clip doesn't hold rounds very tightly at all. And what they do is it makes it very hard to hold them together, hold them back, seated all the way in the clip, and shove them all the way down. The first question we have is, if you're going to shoot the President of the United States, why just take 4 rounds when they only cost 3 cents apiece? Why not a full clip, or 3 or 4? Especially if you might have to defend yourself later. But for some reason, unknown to any of us, we have only 4 rounds accounted for. The clip then fits in, provided all the rounds don't fall out when you try to chamber it. It is now inside the weapon. The clip is locked into place, and the bolt comes home, chambering the first round. Now watch very carefully what happens when we take our shots. First, we fire the first round. Then, we move the bolt handle up, extract to the rear, and the round goes approximately 6 to 7 feet away. We chamber the next round. We fire it. And watch what happens. That one went about 5 feet away. Chamber the third round. And we fire the third round, and this is very important. We eject the third round. We are now down to our last round, the one that for some reason, after Oswald fired three rounds in 5.6 seconds, chambers the round, and you saw the clip fall down to the ground. And there is the clip next to the expended rounds that are on the ground. The rifle was found in this condition. When they picked it up in the Schoolbook Depository, they opened the bolt and found one live round still in the chamber. That round was turned in as a live round found in the chamber. No rounds were reported in the magazine, and yet one line in the warrant provision states that there was a clip that was in the magazine, yet no clip was turned in, no clip was found in any of the photographs, and the clip will not stay in the weapon if the round is chambered anyway. It would have fell out by the windows of the Schoolbook Depository. Now, when the rounds were found, there were 3 empty cases in close proximity to the window, but there was no clip. The clip makes the weapon function. Without this clip, this weapon will not function. It is possible to load one round at a time if one takes one's time, and this weapon doesn't even have a scope on it, which would get in the way of feeding the round. But if you feed one into the bolt and work it just right, you can see how long it takes to put this one round into the weapon. And it's extremely difficult to do. We can play with it, we can finally get it into the weapon, but you have to feed it up and under the extractor for it to work. Now, we got this little problem here is our target's still driving by down below, and we haven't even got the first round in, and I'm not having to jack around with the scope. But now we've got the first round in. We fire it, we eject it, it went about 8 feet away that time, and I would have to do the same thing with the next round. So I have to have the clip. And the question now is, who forgot to plant the clip on the 6th floor, and who failed to find it? And that's the question we have. We submit, therefore, that probably the Carcano found on the 6th floor was not fired that day. Therefore, it was a conspiracy. 5mm Mannlicher Carcano from 1899 through World War II. This particular version is the carbine version, which has originally a folding bayonet and does not have the furniture or the fore-end stock of the little bit longer rifle that Oswald used. Other than that, it's almost identical. The action assembly, the bolt assembly and magazine assembly on the receiver group is identical to the Oswald supposed rifle. The scope is quite similar. It is a side mount scope, and we'll discuss that in a moment. First, what we want to discuss is the operation of a bolt action rifle. This particular rifle, the 6.5 Carcano, fires from the closed bolt position with a bolt that has the bolt handle itself in front of the rear of the receiver. Most Mauser type and infield type rifles, the bolt will be to the rear of the receiver. This makes it for a strong action, but a little hard to manipulate, especially if you're in a hurry. The way a bolt action rifle operates is once the round is fired, the bolt handle is rotated up, pulled to the rear, another bullet appears in the magazine well, is stripped off and put into the chamber. The bolt handle is then locked down, the rifle is sighted, then the trigger is pulled, firing pin goes home, discharging the round. Cycles repeated for the next round. As you pull it out, it ejects the round onto the floor, onto the ground, and then you can then chamber the next round. The Mannlicher Carcano carried 6 rounds in a clip. The 6 rounds fit in line like so. And this is a stripper clip. This is a type of clip that is used to load the weapon itself with 6 rounds. During the assassination investigation, only 4 rounds were accounted for. That was 4 empty rounds on the floor next to the window and 1 in the chamber. Correction, 3 empty rounds on the floor and 1 in the chamber of the rifle. The way this weapon works is like so. Open the magazine by moving the bolt to the rear. You take the stripper clip with 6 rounds and you lock it into the magazine well. Now, a normal weapon at this point that would use a stripper clip type operation, the clip would go halfway down and then stop, and then you would push the bullets, and the bullets would then go down and charge the magazine. However, this magazine has no way in which to hold or retain those cartridges. So therefore, the entire clip goes down into the weapon and locks in place. Now, what is important about this is the fact that the clip does stay in the weapon. And it stays in the weapon until the last round is chambered. Now, as you can see, on the weapon itself, we have 6 rounds lined up, ready to go. The stripper clip is in the weapon. It is locked in place. As we move the bolt home, it strips off the first round from the stripper clip and chambers it. Locking the bolt handle down, and now the weapon is ready to fire. Okay, once the weapon is fired, we then move the bolt up and to the rear, pulling the round out of the chamber and extracting it. We then load the next round, aim, fire, and extract. That one went about 8 feet. Again, aim, fire, extract, and so on down the line. Now, to duplicate what happened on the 22nd of November, according to the Warren report, Oswald took 4 rounds up into the Texas Schoolbook Depository. That's all that were accounted for. There was 4 in the clip. 3 were fired, 1 was left in the magazine. So, what we want to watch now is something very unique that happens with this weapon that happens with very few other weapons. The weapon is fired, and as the last round is chambered, what we want to watch now is something very unique to the Mannlicher Carcano that was not brought up in any of the other reports. And that is this. Watch very carefully what happens underneath the magazine as I chamber the last round, as would have happened with the last round of the Oswald weapon before it was hidden in the opposite corner of the book depository on the 6th floor. That is the stripper clip. And the stripper clip falls out from the magazine well itself after the last round is chambered. Not fired, but chambered. 1 round was found chambered in the weapon. No mention was made of the stripper clip at that time, and it isn't seen in the photographs. There is one photograph in which the stripper clip might be seen protruding from the bottom of the magazine well. The problem is, if you look at the bottom of the magazine well, you'll see a large hole. On the opposite end, the only thing you see is a lever that pushes up against the bottom of the rounds. This clip will not stay inside the weapon. It could not have stayed in there as Oswald ran across the 6th floor to hide it. It falls straight through. So therefore, we submit that without the clip, the weapon cannot be used. And if it cannot be used, then it was not fired that day. The next thing I want to talk about is the optics. Now, the optics of the 6.5 Carcano that Oswald had, you'll see because the clip has to be loaded straight down into the magazine, the scope has to be offset. This particular scope is offset with a side mount almost identical to the Oswald rifle. The only difference is this scope was mounted correctly. That means the windage and elevation adjustments are on the proper sides of the scope. This is an adjustment knob on the right for elevation, an adjustment knob on top for windage. If you look at the Oswald pictures, you will find that what happened was they switched the scope over, and you've got the top elevation knob on the left, and the knob that should be on the right on top. Okay? Now that changes the way you adjust the scope, and if you're not familiar with it, you're never going to be able to get it sighted in correctly because everything will go just the opposite of what you want it to do. The next thing you need to notice is what this does when you line up a scoped weapon that has an offset sight. First, most people are used to being able to lock in on the stock and put their cheek on a place known as a spot weld. That's where the cheek and the back of the thumb come together on the stock to sight in on the target. The problem is with this rifle, as we look, we see that the scope does not line up with my shooting eye, and nor does it line up with my left eye, even if I wanted to shoot it that way. So therefore, I have to move my head off of the rifle, which is a very unstable position, and try to get a sight picture with the scope. Now that I've got a sight picture, I rotate back around, and you can see the distance I have with the scope. Now at this point, I have to have a clear, unobstructed view with no half-moon shadows anywhere on the scope. The problem I have now is I have to be very cautious because of recoil driving the scope back. Very sharp edge would make a half-moon cut in my face because of the recoil. I have to make my body very rigid, and I have to do it every shot or I'm going to have a cut from that scope, from the recoil. Now at this point, it should be noted that how short the stock is to the shoulder on the Mannlicher Carcano. It's extremely short for an American because we are a little bit larger than our European counterparts. So now we have to get a just perfect sight alignment, the sight picture, head position, and eye relief. And eye relief is the distance between the eyeball and the scope to make our shot. Then we have to be able to work the bolt, bring it back into position, reacquire the target. Now, we have to take it away from our eye because if we don't, we find that the bolt will hit us in the face. We cannot cock this weapon and just run it back in and be right back on target. So the sequence of events with recoil would be the first shot, second shot, third shot. About that fast. That's for aimed fire, and there's no way that we're going to be able to do that in 5.6 seconds. The other question that we must ask ourselves is why only 4 rounds? The clip holds 6. At that time, ammunition for this weapon cost between 3 cents and 5 cents per round. If Oswald planned to go up there and shoot the president, why just 4 rounds when just one clip would have only cost at the most 10 cents more to fill up the clip? That's something we don't know. We submit, therefore, that this weapon, without the stripper clip, which would make it inoperable without the stripper clip, was not fired because the people who planted the weapon failed to know that that fact existed around this particular rifle, and therefore they failed to plant the stripper clip at the right time. It was only mentioned briefly in the Warren report, but we don't know when or where that information came from because it was in the description of this type of rifle section of the Warren report. This is the 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano, quite similar to the one Oswald supposedly used in the 6th floor of the Schoolbook Depository. It's a little bit different in the fact that this is the carbine version that's a little bit shorter. It had a foldable bayonet, and it doesn't have the wood furniture on the end piece of the stock in front of the forearm grip. Other than that, the action is the same action as the 6.5 Carcano. There's a lot that's been written about this particular weapon. However, there's a few things that have been left out that I think are very relevant to the case. This is a bolt-action rifle. It fires a very unpredictable cartridge. But what's most unique about it is the sense that the bolt handle is in front of the rear of the receiver instead of to the rear of the receiver behind the bolt, where it normally would be on a Mauser-type action. This makes it a little harder to work the bolt. It's a strong action, but it's very crude and very rough, and it does not have the smoothness of, say, a Mauser or Weatherby or a Springfield or Enfield. It has a 6-round fixed magazine well. This does not detach. It does have the capability of firing 6 rounds, but they have to be loaded from a clip that is a stripper-type clip but it is not similar in any way to the normal strip of clips